All right, before we talk to our next guest, I just want to remind you of some facts. And can I say that for these facts, I was looking for the best place to find, well, I don't know, the least controversial, the least biased coverage of this event. And I ended up yesterday thinking Wikipedia, the online encyclopedia Wikipedia, and it really does run through the facts of what we're about to talk about pretty well. On the 7th of October 2023, Hamas and several other Palestinian nationalist militant groups launched coordinated armed incursions from the Gaza Strip into the Gaza envelope of southern Israel, the first invasion of Israeli territory since the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. The attack coincided with the Jewish religious holiday Simchat Torah. Hamas and the other Palestinian armed groups named the attack Operation Al-Qaza Flood, while in Israel they were referred to as Black Sabbath or the Simchat Torah Massacre, and internationally as the 7th October attacks. They initiated the ongoing Israel-Hamas war. They began with a barrage of at least 4,300 rockets launched against Israel and vehicle-transported and powered paraglider incursions into Israel. Hamas fighters breached the Gaza-Israel barrier, attacking military bases and massacring civilians in 21 communities. According to an IDF report, that revised the estimate on the number of attackers. 6,000 Gazans breached the border in 119 places and broke into Israel, including 3,800 from the elite Nukba forces and 2,200 civilians and other militants. Additionally, the IDF report estimated 1,000 Gazans fired rockets from the Gaza Strip, bringing the total number of participants on Hamas's side to 7,000 people. In total, 1,139 people were killed, 695 Israeli civilians, including 38 children, 71 foreign nationals, 373 members of the security forces. That's while they said they were targeting soldiers. 364 civilians were killed and many more were wounded while attending the Nova Music Festival. At least 14 Israeli civilians were killed by the IDF's use of the Hannibal Directive. About 250 Israeli civilians and soldiers were taken as hostages to the Gaza Strip, alive or dead, including 30 children, with the stated goal to force Israel to exchange them for imprisoned Palestinians, including women and children. Dozens of cases of rape and sexual assault reportedly occurred, but Hamas officials deny the involvement of their fighters. So there are the facts as, well, I don't know, as starkly as I could find them online anywhere from Wikipedia. And what has happened in the year since that terrible day is a massive escalation in the armed or the hot conflict between Israel and the militant groups that are allowed to surround it or hide in surrounding countries, and a truly most appalling rise in anti-Semitism around the world on campuses and even in our streets. It is a really sad, I would imagine, anniversary or birthday for people connected to Israel and people of the Jewish faith. We are joined now from the Israel Institute by David Cumin. Geez, David, you read those numbers again, you realise, man, it was a carefully coordinated and very deadly attack.
It was, and part of the decades-long, centuries-long, if you want to read back, war against the Jews. And unfortunately, there are still 101 people held hostage in Hamas tunnels. It's devastating numbers, a very sad day. And the one thing that I think is missing from that, and I'm not usually one to rely on Wikipedia, but that's a pretty good summary. The one thing I think is worth mentioning, in addition to all of that, is the complicity of the United Nations. The lack of condemnation early on, much like Minister Mahuta when she was Foreign Minister in New Zealand, but the United Nations hasn't really gone against. They still haven't condemned Hamas, for example, in any resolution.
Well, de facto, some of their employees through UNRWA were actually involved and supported those involved.
Exactly right. And we fund them. And we've funded them for decades while they've employed terrorists and fomented hate through their school system and online and incited violence. And our government has never condemned them. And it's disgusting and appalling that we are so complicit in ongoing hate and incitement and the terror that occurred on October 7th and the fallout thereof. My only hope is that we can recover the 101 people still held hostage and that the IDF does what's necessary to stop further terror, not only for Israelis and Jews, but for the people of Gaza and the people of Lebanon and the people of Iraq and the people of Syria and the people of Iran, all of whom suffer because these terror groups are intent on destroying the Jewish nation.
David, it has claimed, and a figure of 40,000 is given as the death toll caused by Israeli counterattack in various guises. Do you think that's an accurate figure? And I guess if someone was trying to somehow put these things on a scale and balance them, you'd say, wow, you've killed far more Palestinian kids or Gazan kids than, Hamas killed Israeli kids. Yeah,
the Nazis used that same argument after World War II. It's called the Dresden Defense, where they said, we did some bad things, but look what you did to Dresden. You bombed it to nothing and to rubble. And the judges at the time that were hearing the case were wise enough to understand there is a distinct difference between a group of people that intentionally go out to rape and mutilate and slaughter and murder and kidnap civilians and an army that is doing all it can to reduce civilian deaths while trying to eliminate the ongoing threat. And yes, 40,000 is probably about right. Both Israel and Hamas generally agree roughly on those numbers. It's tragic. We have to remember, though, that according to the IDF, there are about half of those who are militants. And the 1-to-1 ratio is an extraordinary feat for any military in any conflict, let alone one where they've had 17 years under the nose of the United Nations and international observers to build tunnels, to smuggle in rockets, to build up a terror network infrastructure and oppress the people there. And so if you're weighing up things on a purely, death balance, it's not balanced. Okay. But that's not how we judge war. That's not how we should judge war. It's an obscene and morbid scale to use and is not applicable. That's not how international law works. That's not how our norms work, for good reason.